Being described as a Payday experience might feel like a bit of a curse after Payday 3's launch brought shame to the title last year, but frankly, Notoriety is probably just happy to exist again, given it was once taken down by the corporate hand that now feeds into its new subtitle. Now, I'll admit, this Roblox game has never been shy in wearing its inspiration on its sleeve, which is why I'm not exactly surprised there were a few legal hiccups back in the day. But receiving this official blessing, which likely comes with some sort of revenue split contract, allows Moonstone Games, led by Evan Pickett, to republish and start developing the game once more. It's an obvious win-win. Notoriety gets to exist again, whilst for Starbreeze, it's much more about getting their IP back out there in a positive light. And best of all, it becomes possibly the most officially endorsed Payday-like of all time, which lands it right in my sights for my new series. Last time I covered the COD Black Ops 6 heisting adjacent campaign. This time I'm going to be covering what is quite literally Payday 2 in Roblox, so prepare yourself. For a bit of context, I never got around to playing Notoriety before the cease and desist landed at Evan's desk, so despite all your requests back in the day, I don't know much about the game it once was, meaning I will be reviewing the experience as a new player picking it up right now. Also, it seems pertinent to mention that I have never played any Roblox game before. That doesn't mean I don't see the appeal of what is effectively Payday 2 with non-existent hardware requirements thanks to the voxel foundations. It just won't be entirely frictionless getting into what is an undoubtedly distinct Roblox game feel. That said, I'm going to run you through everything I enjoyed about my time with Notoriety, where I can see some room for improvement, and just what it might offer for fans of the Payday franchise who have been content starved over the past year or so. This is games that are kinda like Payday, but legally distinct from Payday, except in this case, it wasn't really legally distinct enough, so just had to become Payday. Enjoy. At a glance, Notoriety is just a voxel Payday 2, but that's probably not doing it justice. I was surprised to find that this game had its own ideas, and translated a lot of core Payday mechanics far better than I ever imagined possible. In total, there are 19 individual heists within Notoriety as of its relaunch on the 16th of December. Yes, that is still more than Payday 3. 10 are adapted Payday 2 heists, whilst the other 9 are either seasonal event heists, totally fresh concepts or less on the nose, but clearly inspired versions of heists from other Payday games. Much like in Payday 2, there are loud and stealth-only experiences, and of course, Big Bank and Golden Green Casino, a lot behind a DLC paywall, although I'll be damned if I'm investing in any Robux at the ripe old age of 27. Even still, that leaves us with quite an impressive array of heists to play through, with most sitting in that 7 to 15 minute time to complete sweet spot we're used to. I won't be running through every heist here, but it is important to note that Notoriety seems to have elements of heist RNG, which helps to recreate that replayability Payday 2 was so known for. On the Black Friday heist, for example, loosely based off stealing Xmas, you might be asked to route through either a jewelry store or clothes shop. Other heists, such as Rush Hour and Evolution of 4 stores, have expanded variations with objectives being seeded from run to run. This means that the heist roster is more impressive than it might originally appear at first glance, with repeat playthroughs undoubtedly being encouraged. For me, one of my favourite loud heists is Transport, Notoriety's rendition of Watch Dogs, making it the only multi-day heist in the game. Being as old as it is in Payday 2, it fits the innate simplicity of this game perfectly, functioning as a simple bag-moving gauntlet which often dictates its own pace with prescribed holdouts. This makes combat the absolute focus of this one, and whilst its objectives are almost entirely copy-pasted, work has been done to freshen up its layout, alongside the addition of new challenges such as enemy sniper and SWAT turret spawns. This heist has some of the most dynamic and varied enemy spawn logic I've encountered, making it one of the most enjoyable and challenging loud-only heists in the game. Great for testing out new builds, which has to be the highlight of Notoriety for me. As for stealth, the Ozella heist, an original that's heavily inspired by the Alesso gig heist from Payday 2, might actually be a more tightly crafted stealth-only experience. This heist is densely populated, requiring a solid understanding of the game's movement to complete, but also demanding quick objective thinking from the player. After finding and memorizing the serial number on an RFID box, you need to seek out a set of blueprints with a corresponding RGB color code and power box. They could have easily just defaulted to Payday 2's cut the right wire objective, but I love that they went above and beyond here. After entering the basement, you'll need to find a vault password within the back admin offices, locating a USB before controlling a sieve on this staircase to hack a laptop and memorize a 4-digit code. Back down in the basement, what you assume to be the final piece of the puzzle is a keycard found in the VIP changing rooms, allowing you to use both the code and the card to open up the secret vault at the top of the building. Here's the twist though, the $6 million guitar we're here to steal isn't there. It's actually being used for the ongoing stadium performance, meaning we now need to locate some rope and a hook back down in the basement for a genuinely insane plan B. Finally heading up to the ops booth, controlling the technical aspects of the performance to hack the lights and climb up to the rafters to set up the rope and hook with a makeshift pulley system. As the lights are dropped, you Looney Tunes the guitar straight out of the band member's hands, plucking it directly out of the air before fleeing back to the guard lockers. Here, we're almost done with this monumental heist as we enter back into casing mode by changing into a security uniform and simply need to avoid walking too close to any real guards on our way back out of the venue with the loot. This heist is fairly blatant in where it copies Alesso's homework, with the casing mode escape and pyro booth takeover, but it's also very much its own experience with a lovingly crafted layout and completely original objectives that are super challenging on harder difficulties, making it immensely satisfying once you finally clear it. A real highlight that might be worth installing the game to try on its own, even if you're skeptical about the idea of Payday in Roblox. That said, even with some impressive heist offerings, I'd probably argue that for any current fan of the Payday franchise, the real draw of this one, which had me going back for more, is its skill and weapon system. Again, because it unabashedly copies Payday 2's skill trees, even down to sharing some identical effects, there's a hell of a lot of replayability just found in trying everything out. I was also pleased to see some new and unique skill ideas, up alongside classics such as Joker's or Inspire. Skills that allow your drill to stun enemies who get close, or reflect damage as an armor build are undoubtedly standouts. There's a simplicity to the skill system, as you level up just as you might in Payday 2, with a similarly rapid early curve, gaining a skill point every level and bonus points every 10, which can then be used across the 4 original archetype trees of Mastermind, Enforcer, Technician, and Ghost. Instead of being limited to moving up one line within each tree though, any point spent will give you access to the 4 skills across each individual tier as you progress your investment. Like I say, it's familiar, but streamlined and feels genuinely good to engage with and theory craft around, even if the game obviously lacks some of Payday 2's depth. As for weapons, split between primaries and secondaries, there are over 40 in total, which might be the most impressive feat of this entire game. They're all fairly unique and don't fall into that dreaded Payday 2 trap of bloat leading to dozens of guns doing virtually the same job. Available categories include ARs, LMGs, SMGs, shotguns, pistols, snipers, and special weapons, although unfortunately, many of the more unique weapons like explosives, flamethrowers, or miniguns are also locked behind real cash purchases. I don't have enough experience with Roblox to really speak for these microtransactions because, as I understand, they likely make up most of the revenue these free-to-play experiences can earn. From chatting to others more in the know, I have heard that these paid weapons can be some of the best in the game, which doesn't exactly surprise me, so keep that in mind, although I felt that the base offering was more than enough to keep me engaged when theory crafting new builds. Hell, we even have classics like the Judge or M14 to play around with, which kept me going without spending a penny. Weapons can also be customized with a number of standardized attachments across most guns in the game, including barrel mods, sights, and lasers. The implementation here is a little spotty. I'd love to know how an attachment was going to impact my weapon before having to take the plunge and purchase it, but unless I'm missing something, that's not currently possible. Still, every weapon has easy to understand stats behind it, presented numerically, which is a bonus, and all fit into different styles of build. You can set up around pistols, snipers, or shotguns, and each playstyle seems to have a tangible reason to exist within the game. Undoubtedly, there is a meta. Dodge felt incredibly strong, especially on harder difficulties, where things can end up quite challenging and build dependent, but I had fun just playing the game however I wanted to, and never really felt punished for doing so. In addition to your skills and ranged weapons, you can round out any build with your choice of melee weapon, gadget, which includes throwables and utility options like the saw, equipment, and armor type. These all make a very tangible impact on how your build plays. Much like in Payday 2, armor will dictate things like your chance to dodge, which is a nightmarish mechanic to balance, but has always been something players have resonated with, courting this fast and loose glass kind of playstyle that I'm also partial to. Outside of that, we get to choose between trip mines, sentries, and ECMs, alongside the usual suspects such as medic bags within that equipment slot, all with their own dedicated skills and applications. Assets even show up here, although these are simplistic by design. I know this game is incredibly faithful to Payday 2, so nothing comes as much of a surprise, but what I didn't expect was just how well these mechanics transferred over to the sandbox of Roblox. The inherent jank of Roblox bounces off Payday 2's loose design principles excellently, and the end result is this admittedly simplified, yet consistently charming and unpredictably addicting video game that's completely changed how I view the Roblox platform as a conduit for games. It's created with that passion and reverence for what made Payday 2 the success it was that's so often missing from Payday 2, so the irony that the multi-million-dollar produced sequel could learn from a janky experience with character models looking like this, which abundantly plagiarized its own predecessor, is not lost on me. Yeah, here we are. The bloody Notoriety trailer has almost 3 times the views as the First World Bank trailer, for God's sake. Not dwelling too much on that situation, as I've already mentioned, the stealth loud split is very much still a thing here, so it probably makes sense to review those core playstyles separately, starting with my usual preference for loud. Immediately, you will be greeted by familiar mechanics, pretty much regardless of the heist you take on. A police response, which follows on from the alarm, bringing with them scaling waves with different cop types to challenge you differently depending on your build. Spawns tend to be heavily clumped and simplistic in nature, but some of the SWAT variations do enough to change up how you'll need to approach any assault wave. After holding out for a few minutes, the assault will drop and you'll have some time and space to focus on the objectives at hand, usually consisting of the standard Payday 2 formula of managing drills, hacks, or carrying loot bags around, whilst also giving you a chance to trade back any teammates you might have lost in exchange for civs. Or before the assault ramps up again, with what feels like wave-to-wave scaling difficulty, although that's just anecdotal from my end. This gameplay flow is as old as time itself, or at least 2011. It's simplistic by design and allows the core fun of the gameplay and heist theme to do most of the heavy lifting. It's a sandbox really that thrives on solid RPG mechanics, which suits Roblox perfectly. My initial impressions from playing on normal was that the game just sort of played itself, despite being a fun and faithful rendition of Payday, but as I put more time into the game and push the difficulty up, especially on Extreme and Nightmare, it can lead to a genuinely challenging and compelling experience. If you're bored, I really recommend ramping up quickly. The special enemies are a real highlight, taking obvious inspiration from Payday 2, but actually expanding the roster fairly successfully. The usual array of cops, SWATs, and hostage rescue units all exist with their own unique weaponry, but you'll start to run across the likes of dual-wielding bulldozers, cloakers, and even a flamethrower unit on hard and above. These massively change up the gameplay loop and require different tactics to take down. Tasers, medics, SWAT vans, shields, and snipers all also make the journey across from Payday 2 with familiar mechanics, and again play into the skill system with build options to directly counter them. Subtle armor and design variations have also been used in places to distinguish enemy types on a heist such as Shadow Raid, making it much easier to tell who's carrying a keycard. For me, these enemy variants are some of the highlights of Loud, and I appreciate all the effort that's gone into giving them unique behaviours and appearances, despite the obvious difficulty of making anything look particularly cool within the Roblox character model framework. I also found Notoriety's revised cop armor system to work quite well, abandoning the pure health approach Payday 2 favours to instead attempt a hybrid armor mechanic which makes how you build, what weapons you use, and where you aim much more important. Without a doubt, there are ways to abuse game mechanics and find holes in the Roblox engine, but if you play this game in good faith, you will be rewarded with a solid heisting sandbox that nails the pure fun factor that Payday 2 was really all about. Weapon experimentation, wacky enemy types that successfully throw players off their game, and light co-op mechanics that never leave you feeling disadvantaged for playing solo, but will reward a coordinated team with an even better time. That's the macro take on Loud gameplay in Notoriety. It's a great platform for trying out new skills and weapons whilst achieving something satisfying, although it rarely does anything truly unique beyond that, and that's fine. But I can see this game getting even better over time, and have a few ideas for where it could start. One issue I found, which is really something inherited from Payday 2, is its dependence on the old hold F on everything approach to objective design. This can get old quickly, and without many fancy animations outside of this one for using a crowbar, there isn't even anything interesting going on your screen to distract you. Things like the hidden code document on Rush Hour are the sort of things I'd love to see more of, because those hold F loops can get monotonous and actually break up the best parts of Loud gameplay. I'd also love to see more original Loud heists, as these are probably some of my favourites in the game, even if they do lean heavily on previous Payday titles for inspiration. Everything borrowed from Payday 2 feels faithfully adapted, but that's to a fault at times as it falls into those same pitfalls. It can have issues with heist flow, often due to drills artificially extending the length of any mission, and the gap between assault waves is jarringly lengthy on easier difficulties, taking you out of the action for far too long in my opinion. My other main frustration with Loud is more of a fundamental programming one around how most of my failed heists go. 9 times out of 10, the crew AI who make decent damage sponges but do little else get stuck in the geometry of the map and either fail to revive you or go down themselves, leading to complete chaos on harder difficulties. In fact, most of my frustration in Loud is caused by unintended AI behaviour creating problems. This is just the nature of the beast, as I'm sure building everything from the ground up within Roblox has its pitfalls, but if a few AI related struggles could be cleaned up, I'd certainly found Loud to be a more consistent experience without those added frustrations that feel outside of my control. Otherwise, when things are working properly, it's a damn fun horde shooter that excels in its gunplay and makes the most of its, at times, ludicrous roster of blocky enemies that just feel good to shoot at. Its simplicity is a strength, leaning on solid pacing, especially on harder difficulties, to keep it replayable and fresh. Moving on to the stealth experience, this one is strange and is definitely going to be Marmite to some. It's essentially a purely movement-based stealth game, crystallizing the fast-paced stealth experience you would get from Yakuza in Payday 2 and honing in on that directly, given the obvious limitations of patrolling AI in Roblox. Essentially, there is very little guile to this game. You won't be distracting guards or trying to keep tabs on them with spotting your camera mechanics. Instead, heists on harder difficulties will be saturated by civs, security and cams, and you'll need to brazenly move around them faster than they can spot you. Realism be damned, you're playing Roblox for Christ's sake. Success is all about map knowledge, confident movement and precise inputs. You still have the ability to do things like use ECMs to shut down cams and pages, or break into the camera room to shut them down completely, with the inherited 4-pager limit at your disposal. But most of that can be ignored if your movement skills are good enough. It just takes a bit of getting used to exactly how much you can get away with. Put it this way, unless you run directly into a guard, they will not notice you so long as you're moving towards the edge of their field of view. That means you can run straight in front of people without much concern, so long as you know you're making it to cover or outside of their line of sight. Sometimes it's satisfying, other times it's just ridiculous, and occasionally it feels just a little too easy, but it seems like they've worked quite hard to compensate for their boneheaded AI with challenging map layouts and camera positioning. Take Art Gallery for example. I have to make a number of almost perfectly timed dashes through the displays to make it back outside once I've entered through the skylight. It's tricky and an art in itself, but it's almost always a solution to any problem, which seems like a bit of a shame within a stealth game, which tends to be more about creative thinking and innovation. Again, I want to stress, I think this is probably a case of making the best of a bad situation, and often stealth in Notoriety feels fun to run through, but it still lacks much in the way of depth. There are a few interesting things that can change up the experience from time to time. For example, although the page mechanic is still around to discourage you taking out security, if you do, you can now bag a body to make them easy to hide, or simply drag and throw them out of sight. Funnily enough, this is a combination of Payday 2 and 3's body moving systems, and as a result is superior to both. I also found civilian moving to be far more responsive compared to what I've become used to from the Payday franchise, which is good as it's used for a bonus objective on Nightclub, where again, Notoriety succeeds in changing up the formula of a classic heist in a fairly innovative way. Silent heists can be made easier via skills like Nimble and Infiltrator in the Ghost Tree, resembling classic mechanics that allow you to lockpick directly into safes and silently crash through doors, which can be used to complete speed stealth runs you're probably used to from Payday 2. I quietly smiled to myself upon seeing I could ECM rush a jewelry store, which functions more like Ukrainian Job in Notoriety. Whilst the variety is limited, I still enjoy stealth overall. In those instances where they do get more imaginative, just like in Loud, that's when things really come together. Heists like Rush Hour have these unique little code puzzles to do things like turn off cams or access hidden rooms, and it shows what you can do with simple variations to break up the monotony. Being able to play icons of the stealth heist genre like Shadow Raid is a massive boon, and I found mastering heists in stealth to be incredibly rewarding. There's enough nuance and randomness to their layout and design that nailing the flowchart down can be extremely satisfying, which is enough for me most of the time. There are a few problems I want to highlight though that don't necessarily fall into either stealth or loud. For one, the music just doesn't cut it for me. It attempts to emulate that bright and vibrant Vikland era of popping drum and bass solely using royalty-free tracks that are at best tolerable and at worst direly repetitive. More so than the tracks themselves though, I don't like the way they've been spliced together to capture the flow of stealth into loud. The importance of Payday's phase-based music system can't be understated. Unfortunately, many of the tracks currently in the game just come out of nowhere, meaning no crescendo, which is so crucial to driving the Payday experience. I'd love to see more done to try and emulate that in the future. Sticking with audio, I also find it disappointing just how few lines in the game are voice acted. Our handler Jade, who didn't half have me wondering who'd been copying whose homework recently upon learning her name, is well written and constantly shares crucial heisting information. But without a voice to accompany the text, it's difficult to follow, sometimes leading to confusingly unexplained objectives. Our heisters also go unvoiced, and so there's always this slight disconnect between what we're doing in-game and the weight of our actions. I fully understand why this hasn't been a priority in the past, but I believe at least giving Jade a voice actor would have positive gameplay implications, making every heist easier to follow. Hell, it would also lend the game more credibility, which is somewhat important when slapped with the Payday experience title. Obviously there isn't much of a narrative either, but a few voice lines here and there could really help with characterization and world building. The game also understandably suffers from an anticipated level of jank that I'd love to see cleaned up somewhat as the game gains popularity again. Randomly lobotomized enemies and really poor clipping issues where you'll take damage and be spotted through many solid items are probably par for the course in Roblox, but these problems can frustrate and take you out of the action at times. Hopefully, this sort of critique is valuable though, because there's a hell of a lot this game does exceptionally well too. For example, the little wristwatch we wear is a cool immersive UI innovation, changing its display dynamically depending on your current health and armor situation. In terms of progression and character customization, I'm also fairly impressed. You level up at a reasonable pace that is really expedited by completing heists on the hardest difficulty. Of course, there are strategies inherited directly from Payday 2 to speed things along, such as speedrunning Nightclub using skills that allow you to avoid having to drill anything. These repetitive approaches are punished by a declining heist XP bonus, which promotes switching between heists instead of just grinding the same thing over and over. My main drive to level was the skill system, but there are also plenty of other things to strive for example safes, which are functionally loot boxes, but also exist entirely for free, found within heists, with a chance to drop rare items like mass to further customize your character. Starbreeze partners were gifted a bit of a starter pack code, which is why my inventory is full of cosmetics, ranging from abominations to far cooler than a Lego man really deserves. Daily and weekly challenges also exist, a further opportunity to unlock rare weapon skins, giving the game even more inherent replayability. The heist economy is generally solid, although I'm sure you can easily out-earn the cost of most items in the game if you get decent at Nightmare difficulty, although much of the endgame progression is all about prestige, moving through 25 infamy ranks which have some seriously tangible bonuses in this game, allowing you to access even more skills in the build and become totally overpowered with time. Not great for game balance, but excellent at keeping you playing. As I've already mentioned, that blend of RNG, impressive weapon and build variety, and something to always strive for makes the game far more replayable than it might appear on the surface. It's using those Payday 2 blueprints to their fullest. Of course, for some, it being a Roblox game might be a deal breaker, and let me tell you, a couple of weeks ago I was one of those people. You're not necessarily wrong to be skeptical. Many of its core issues come down to being exactly that. But the thing is, after finally taking the plunge, I'm genuinely hooked and about to hit level 100 for the first time. Looks can be deceiving, and once I swallowed my pride on this one, I finally got to see it for what it really was. A passion project that has been granted a second chance as a result of staying so faithful to the very thing that once saw it taken down. It does what it does amidst really challenging, yet incredibly accessible confines. That's really the secret sauce for Notoriety. Anyone can play it. The barrier for entry is immensely low in terms of cost, performance, and complexity. Yet it still shows moments of brilliance despite these limitations. Given the opportunity, I'd always recommend Payday 2 over this, considering it's a vast and relatively polished alternative, yet doing so doesn't preclude being able to recommend Notoriety independently. For anyone who, like me, already has thousands of hours in Payday 2 and wants to experience something different despite shared DNA, or for anyone unable to play Payday 2 due to cost concerns, low-spec hardware, or some of its more mature themes, Notoriety is more than worthy of its newly gained subtitle and might even have lessons to teach its new stepbrother in Payday 3. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you've ever played Notoriety and what you think of it, especially now it has been given the right to exist again under the banner of the Payday IP. Take care, hope you're having a brilliant holiday season, and I'll see you all very soon. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.